What would happen if Earth was completely covered in water, with no land at all? The short answer is, we'd all become really, really good at swimming. Also, the pizza delivery industry would face some serious logistical challenges. But that's not quite right. At the risk of stating the obvious, the real answer is that humans probably wouldn't exist at all on a water world. Evolution took us from the oceans to land for good reasons, and without continents, we'd likely still be fish arguing about whether legs are theoretically possible. However, let's imagine we somehow ended up on a water world anyway. The first thing you'd notice is that weather would be completely different. Without large landmasses to create temperature variations, there'd be no seasonal changes. The entire planet would have a tropical oceanic climate year-round. Sounds nice, right? Well, not exactly. Without continents to break up air currents, you'd get massive planet-spanning storms. These wouldn't be your typical hurricanes that peter out when they hit land. We're talking about superstorms that could circle the globe for months, with winds reaching speeds that would make a Category 5 hurricane look like a gentle breeze. But here's where it gets interesting. A water world wouldn't just be an endless blue desert. Ocean currents would create distinct regions with different temperatures, nutrient levels, and life forms. You'd essentially have underwater continents made of different water masses. The Gulf Stream, for instance, would become a massive river flowing through the ocean, potentially thousands of kilometers wide. Without soil runoff from land, the water would be incredibly clear. You could probably see down hundreds of meters in most places. This means photosynthesis could occur much deeper, creating vast underwater forests of kelp and other marine plants, stretching from the surface down to depths that would make terrestrial trees jealous. Now, if humans somehow survived on this water world, we'd need to completely reimagine civilization. Forget about agriculture as we know it. We'd be farming kelp forests and breeding fish in massive aquaculture operations. Cities would be floating structures, probably arranged in hexagonal patterns to better distribute wave forces. The entire concept of real estate would be fluid, literally. But here's the really weird part. Without tidal pools, beaches, and shallow coastal areas where life typically makes the transition from water to land, evolution would take completely different paths. You might see flying fish that never need to land, or marine mammals that develop even more sophisticated echolocation systems. Maybe we'd see creatures that could manipulate tools underwater with the same dexterity land animals use in air. Transportation would be fascinating. Forget roads and highways. We'd have current ways, where vehicles ride the natural flow of ocean streams. Rush hour would depend on tidal schedules, and traffic jams would be three-dimensional affairs, with vehicles stacked vertically in the water column. The strangest consequence would be on human psychology and culture. Without the concept of solid ground, our entire language would change. We wouldn't talk about being grounded or having solid foundations. Instead, we might say someone is well anchored or riding the current. Maps would be constantly changing as floating cities drift with the currents. Weather prediction would become the most important science, because a storm on a water world isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially civilization ending. Meteorologists would be the most respected members of society, probably treated like ancient oracles. And here's something nobody thinks about. Without mountains, valleys, or any fixed geographical features, navigation would be incredibly difficult. We'd probably develop a completely different relationship with astronomy, using stars and currents as our only reliable reference points. GPS satellites would be essential for basic daily life. The really mind-bending part is that without the water cycle as we know it, there'd be no rain in the traditional sense. All water would already be ocean water. Instead, you'd get massive water spouts and underwater geysers created by thermal vents, which would be the planet's primary weather phenomena. But perhaps the most profound change would be to human consciousness itself. Land-based humans think in terms of territory, borders, and ownership. On a water world, everything would be fluid, temporary, and shared. We might develop a completely different philosophy based on flow, adaptation, and collective survival rather than individual property rights. In the end, living on a water world would make us fundamentally different beings. We wouldn't just be humans who happen to live on water. We'd be an entirely different species, shaped by an environment that demands constant adaptation, cooperation, and a very different relationship with the concept of home. Of course, we'd also have to deal with the fact that all our Wi-Fi routers would need to be waterproof. And don't even get me started on what would happen to the concept of dry cleaning.